When the man comes around. When the man comes around.
Embrace who you really are, son. And you will become a legend.
When the man comes around.
Kraven the Hunter is the latest entry into the Sony Spider-Man spin-off universe. This is the third entry into this universe that we've gotten this year, and that's pretty much why I went in with very low expectations. Venom: The Last Dance should have been a home run. You've got Venom, you've got Tom Hardy, have a fun time with it, and the fans will give you their money, and yet somehow Sony found a way to mess that up. And then of course early this year, well, maybe not a lot of people had high expectations for it, Madam Web was a horrible way to start the year with comic book films. It was an absolute dumpster fire of a film, and pretty much everyone agreed with that. Not everyone. You don't need to go in the comments and tell me how much you loved Madam Web to be edgy and different. That's fine, good for you. But again, I went in with very low expectations because of those two entries and because of the fact that leading up to Kraven the Hunter opening weekend, Sony released that they would be pausing doing anything with the Spider-Man villains for the next couple of years. They're gonna let those sit. They said that they understand fans aren't really reacting as well as they would like them to, so they're gonna take time to focus on projects like Spider-Man Noir starring Nicolas Cage, which, yeah, I'm excited about that. Next, animated Spider-Verse film, which, yeah, I'm absolutely excited about that. And of course, teaming with the MCU with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And I think that's the right way to go. I think that's the way they should have gone all along. Having this weird anti-hero spin-off universe without Spider-Man in the Spider-Man universe just never made a lot of sense to me. So the fact that Sony said they were gonna pause that told me, uh-oh, you don't have a lot of faith that people are gonna react well to this movie. But getting into the movie, it stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven the Hunter. Now listen, when he was cast as Kraven, I thought that was a great choice. He's already done a somewhat sort of Russian accent for Quicksilver in the MCU, and I thought, all right, well, he can do accents. I know he's a good actor, so this should be a fun time. Then they announced it was going to be a rated R bloody comic book film, and that Russell Crowe had been cast as Kraven the Hunter's father. All of that sounded good. Then I saw the trailer, and honestly, the trailer looked fun. You had the Rhino finally making his on-screen appearance. One thing I noticed about the Rhino is that they never showed his face in that original promotional material. And once I saw the movie, I understood, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's everything they had going for this movie going into it. So getting into the synopsis of this film, you find out pretty early on that Kraven was attacked by a lion at a very young age, and some of the lion's blood got into his system. And then due to some weird voodoo magic that happens out in the jungle, he gets these powers to engage with the animals, be more animal-like, become Kraven the Hunter. But he still is not accepted by his very abusive gangster father, played by Russell Crowe, and so he goes on the run in a very hilarious scene that's not supposed to be hilarious, but we'll talk about it a little later on. Anyway, because he goes on the run, he no longer has this Russian accent, but because of his skills and abilities, he does become this assassin hunter, and he is hunting his way back to his father. And that's basically the best synopsis that I can give you in this video. He starts taking out his father's gangster friends all the way up till he can lead up to his father, and while he's doing all of that, he has the antagonist in this film, the Rhino, sort of running a different operation, and then they kind of cross paths, and then they sort of kind of fight in a really bad battle. And that's the movie. So that's the best synopsis I can give you for Kraven the Hunter. If that sounds interesting to you, well, you know what? It is playing in theaters now. You can go check it out there, or it'll probably be streaming before the end of the year. That's how bad this movie is, and I think Sony's just going to want to put it on VOD as quickly as possible, so you could probably check it out there. With all that said, let's get into my positives and some of my negatives. I really only have one positive for this movie, and that's too bad, because with Russell Crowe and Aaron Taylor Johnson, I was hoping to at least say, okay, their performances were standout in this film. But that wasn't even the case. The only real positive that I have for this movie is that it's a rated R bloody comic book film. We haven't gotten a ton of those over the years. Of course, we got the Blade movies. Most recently, we've gotten the Deadpool movies, but most comic book films try to play it safe, try to make sure that you can take your kids, and so they don't have blood, they don't make it R-rated, they don't have like obscene swearing in it because they don't want to deal with that. They want people to bring their families. But in this film, they were like, nope, we're gonna go R-rated. It's Kraven the Hunter. He's a monster in and of himself. He's gonna be fighting people. He's gonna be using animals. So we're gonna go full rated R. And I was like, all right, cool. let's do this. I will say that if you like that kind of violence in a comic book film, then you'll enjoy it. And so that's my only positive, because there were a few scenes in this movie where Kraven has to take some people down, and when he's slicing throats, you just don't get to see that in comic book movies very often, so I'm going to give the movie a positive for that. But that's where my positives end. Let's move on to my negatives. First negative I have in this movie would be the writing and dialogue. I talked about this in my YouTube short, but one of the biggest examples I have in this entire movie, and there's a lot of examples, but the only one I'll give you right here is the scene where Kraven's on the run from his father. He's already gotten these weird powers. He doesn't really know how to use them yet, but he knows he doesn't want his father to use them for evil, and so he goes on the run. And instead of taking a plane or a train where he would have a ticket and it would be traceable, he goes to a boat captain and he asks if he can get on this boat with him and get away. And the boat captain's like, "There's better ways to travel, son. Are you on the run?" And he says, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Well, then hop aboard." And I was just like, that was so silly and stupid. It made me laugh out loud in the theater at a moment that shouldn't have been a funny moment at all. This is a little boy on the run from his abusive family, and yet it's fine. Also, it's weird because he wants to take out his father. He has this vendetta against him. He also wants to take out all of the evil people that his father works with, but he has this nice back and forth with his dad throughout the entire film, and with his little brother, who also turns out to be a very important character in the Spider-Man universe, although his character is wildly underused and exactly how I expected a company like Sony to treat his character. My next negative is something we touched on a little bit earlier, and that is that Aaron Taylor Johnson himself is fine, but he doesn't have the Kraven the Hunter accent. And to me, that really destroys the performance of any actor becoming Kraven. Listen, Kraven the Hunter is a character that I watched as a kid growing up in the animated Spider-Man cartoon show, and you've got Kraven coming to New York City looking for Spider-Man, and he's got this thick accent, and he's one with the environment, he's one with the animals, and he's able to track Spider-Man, and Spider-Man has a really hard time beating him. But this version of Kraven, he can use animals to his advantage, but he just wasn't very intimidating. But I could see this version of Kraven going against any live-action Spider-Man that we've had and getting his ass handed to him pretty quickly. So I didn't find his performance entertaining at all, and that's pretty bad because that is your title character, Kraven the Hunter. And I just didn't feel that Kraven the Hunter. I felt like, well, they got Aaron Taylor Johnson to be exactly himself and put in this role. Cool, calm, collected. Like, it looked like he was auditioning for a James Bond role throughout this film. It didn't feel like he was Kraven the Hunter. That's the best way I can explain it, but I was really disappointed with the Kraven aspect of this film. And I've seen people say, well, they didn't want to give him an accent because he would sound too much like Quicksilver from the MCU. But here's the thing, if that's how you feel, that's fine, but why cast him? I'm not trying to take away work from anybody, but why cast someone if you feel like, oh, well, we don't want him to have the accent of the guy from the MCU, but that would be a perfect accent for Kraven the Hunter, but we're not going to give it to him because we cast Aaron Taylor Johnson. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like a circle of why did you do what you did? That's kind of how I feel. My next negative is about some extra Spider-Man characters that they throw into this film and how horribly they handled them. So outside of the people that you would expect to be in this film, which would be Kraven's wife or Kraven's father, who we saw in the preview, we get the Rhino. And that's no spoiler because the Rhino is in all the promotional work. In fact, I hear that they delayed this movie to give the Rhino a little bit more to do. And the CGI for the Rhino, at least in the face, looks god-awful. I will say that the rest of his costume, I didn't mind it, but his face looked comical the entire time. I couldn't take it serious. Anytime they showed Rhino's face, I was like, this is pretty rough. I mean, I liked what they did with him as far as the look of the Rhino otherwise, but his face was awful. And then his motivation and how he became the Rhino, it was just copy paste. Like, oh yeah, this experiment happened and it didn't go well, and now I've got a little tube thing, and that's also the only place where the Rhino skin doesn't grow, so I hope nobody stabs me there. What are we doing? And so that's the Rhino that you get in this film. And the other character you get, I will say, is a bit of a spoiler. So if you want zero spoilers for Kraven, I don't want to spoil anything for people who are actually interested. So I am going to give a quick spoiler on the other Spider-Man character that they throw in this movie. And here we go. And that would be the Chameleon. The Chameleon is a great Spider-Man villain. He's an assassin in and of himself, but he's someone who can blend in with anybody else. And in the comics, he had this belt buckle that if he clicked it, he he could change into anybody else's features and face, and I loved him as a character. I had him as a character growing up when I had all of the Spider-Man toys, along with Kraven and along with Spider-Man. I just want to point that out. I'm a true fan since I was a kid, had all of those toys, and that chameleon character was always a fun one because I pretended he'd click his belt and then I'd just put the toy down and grab somebody else and be like, oh yeah, this looks like Dr. Octopus, or this looks like Spider-Man. You get the idea. The chameleon is one of those characters I think could be a main Spider-Man villain who could go up against Spider-Man for an entire movie if you wanted to have a movie about spies and espionage. What a great idea where you have someone who can actually transform into other people's facial features and looks, and he can assassinate anybody he wants to just because he can change his voice and everything in between. And throughout the film, they hint at this character being the chameleon the entire time. In fact, at one point, Russell Crowe even says, ah, yes, my boy is the chameleon. Because, more spoiler here, it's one of Russell Crowe's sons. It's the brother to Kraven. So you've got Chameleon and Kraven. And again, in the grand scheme of things, maybe you could have made this work, but the way they do it is so incredibly silly. And then you get to the end of this film, which is actually going to be one of my negatives, so I'll kind of pause on this for a second, but they show the chameleon doing his thing and flipping through faces, and it's just like, too little too late. You waited too long to reveal this. We're at the very end of the movie. And that leads me to my next negative, and that would be the end of this film goes on for way too long. Now, I did think this movie was pretty boring throughout. Yes, there's a couple of rated R violent scenes that help sort of keep the runtime contained, but at the same time, I just felt like this movie went on too long. I felt like the ending of this movie, where you've got this big battle of Kraven versus Rhino, and then Kraven's got to kind of get some things together at the end. You're like, all right, I guess this movie's over. And then he's got to have this whole scene with his dad. And you're like, all right, I guess this movie's over. Let me grab my stuff. Okay, he's doing stuff with his brother now, and his brother is officially the chameleon. Okay, and so it's just this constant ending of a film for a movie that doesn't, A, warrant having that much ending in a film, and B, why would you do this when you've already decided we're not moving on with more Spider-Verse movies? So you gave us a chameleon. I get it, they did this before they decided that, but think about it. They gave us this big setup for Kraven. You got him established in the Spider-Verse now, and now you've got Chameleon, you've got him established in the Spider-Verse now. I believe that means you have 6 overall villains that you could use for your Insidious 6, and the week it's coming out, you go, yeah, we're gonna stop. So none of this matters. But this extra long ending where you go on too much and then you reveal Chameleon, so now you've got your 6th member of this evil group that's gonna go after Spider-Man, or I guess in this universe they would be the good guys and they would go after other bad guys. Again, not making a lot of sense, Sony. I don't know why you keep trying to do this, but they finally decide, you know what, we're not going to do it. So when you get to that ending, it's like, this really, truly doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere with this. We will probably never see Aaron Taylor Johnson in the Kraven suit again. We'll never see the chameleon in that form again. None of that mattered, and it's just hollow at that point. Now, I feel like that's the end of the spoilery things I wanted to talk about. I have one more negative, and it is the biggest negative in this entire film, and that is that Kraven the Hunter was supposed to show up in the MCU's Spider-Man 4. The way No Way Home ended, you had Spider-Man finally embrace fully being Spider-Man in New York City. Nobody knows his identity. Aunt May and Uncle Ben are gone. He doesn't have a girlfriend. He hops out the window in that suit that he created himself. It's a beautiful scene, and it sets the stage for Kraven the Hunter, because that's what the MCU wanted to do. They wanted to introduce Kraven in part 4 and have it Kraven versus Spider-Man, maybe even have a little flavor of Daredevil in there. But Sony was like, no, we need Kraven. It's very important for our Sinister Six universe, so we're not going to let you do that. And so Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland is now going another route. I don't know the official route that it's going. I think it's another Spider-Verse film where we're probably going to get Tony and Andrew, and that's cool that we're going to get those Spider-Men again, but just the idea of a Spider-Man gritty New York movie where he's being hunted by Kraven the Hunter could have been such a fun time, and instead we get Sony's Kraven the Hunter. And to me, that's the biggest negative of this film, is that it impacted a franchise and a group of films that actually tries. It impacted a franchise that has a 95% positive rating. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, MCU has kind of fallen off since Endgame. There's been some misses, but for the most part, you've got 30 plus movies that are really, really good in the MCU. Some even great, some phenomenal. And so you want to take a character like Kraven and put him in a Spider-Man film set in the MCU. I'm all for it. But we didn't get that. Sony needed him for their spin-off Spider-Verse, and we're not actually going to get that now. And so it's just so disappointing that we could have gotten something great with their track record already set in the MCU, and instead we get Kraven the Hunter in the Sonyverse. Only better than Madam Web because it has blood. That's how I feel. Overall, needlessly to say, I did not have a great time with this film. It's not a film I would recommend to anyone. I would say stay away from it. If you absolutely want to see it, wait till it's streaming for free somewhere. I wouldn't pay money to watch this on VOD. I would just wait for it to be free. That's my own personal opinion. Sony doesn't care about the fans, so why should the fans care to go see their movies? That's just my opinion, but as always, those are all just my opinions, and that's my review for Kraven the Hunter. Guys, have you had a chance to see this film yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. If you did go out opening weekend, you watched this movie, let me know what you think about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe there's some things I missed that you really didn't like, or maybe there's some things I missed that you really enjoyed. I did have 2 people in my YouTube Shorts video for Kraven the Hunter go in there and tell me, hey, I really liked it. I had one person say, I liked it. And I said, okay, what'd you like about it? And they never responded. And the other comment I got said I saw Madam Web twice, and because of that, I'm really excited for Kraven the Hunter. So I guess there's people out there that are just bound and determined to enjoy the Sonyverse, and that's fine. I'm not trying to take away from anybody. You like what you like, and that's fine. But I did respond to that person as well, and I said, well, what did you like about Madam Web that you saw it twice? Because listen, could have been their cup of tea, but no response. So if you did enjoy Kraven, or any of the Sonyverse, tell me why in the comment section down below. It seems like the Sony Spider-Man adjacent universe is officially coming to an end, so I feel like we can finally talk about what was the highlights and what were the biggest lows. So let's do that in the comment section. That'd be fun. Finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my Kraven the Hunter review, and I hope you enjoyed this. Had a decent time making this review. I am in a hotel. I have been trying to get through some sort of a cold, so I've been slower to upload full reviews because even right now, my voice feels kind of strange, so we'll get there. I will get home, have my normal set in the background, but I wanted to review this for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to check out any other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my best and worst of 2024 right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there. I hit my elbow. But right there.